was even like the original Chicken Run that good.
Oh, now we're getting into some shaky territory here. I will not be having Chicken Run slander. Hello, and welcome to HAZMAT, the only show that turns up to the cinema in a big trench coat, so we only have to pay for one ticket.
That's the best way of doing it.
Yeah. We're just one really tall man.
In fact, we're actually not even that. We're like four, because like each one of us has like two people like controlling.
Yeah.
And then inside of them, it's like a bag full of hamsters.
Yeah, and then inside of them is like little flies pulling the strings.
And then it's the like tiny little ants.
Yeah. And then inside that is like one amoeba. That's the mastermind.
The
of the whole operation.
And then inside that is like an entire new universe. It's like Men in Black.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Harry.
And this is the monthly thing.
TMT, it's explosive,
TMT.
baby!
Woo! TMT. Dynamite. This is our new monthly segment where we're going to talk about everything we saw this month, new films, TV shows, anything we want really, and just whether we recommend them, what we thought about them.
I think we both kind of agreed that it's not really our bag. It's super hard to kind of attribute like an arbitrary number, like ranking, scoring system to film.
Yeah,
it's
we've
very much
struggled
our
with that
feeling.
a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
So we'd rather just sort of say a recommend or don't recommend or just general thoughts about it. We like just chatting shit.
Because it's harder when you start giving numbers to stuff because then you start comparing it to other
Yeah, and I feel
things.
like anytime I give numbers, it's kind of relative, and it's like an 8 isn't the same 8 as something else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because like, it's weird that like an 8 for me, for like an 8 for a horror movie would not be the same as an 8 for like a prestige drama
Exactly.
or for like an action film.
Yeah. So we're just sort of going to avoid all that for now. So let's get into everything we saw in January.
And also a little bit of December.
And a little bit of December.
A little bit of December.
Yeah, we should stress again, like our top 10 video, we're going by UK release date, and we got some of this stuff a little bit later than America and maybe some other places.
One thing in particular was very egregious in...
Yeah, we should have got that when it came
Yeah.
out. We'll get to that in a bit. And just a little warning, we're probably going to get into some spoilery territory here. We'll say whether we recommend them up top and then go into our thoughts about them. So if you haven't seen these particular films yet, feel free to skip to the next section.
We'll mark everything out clearly so you can easily kind of just jump back and forth between what you want to hear about and what you don't.
Yeah, this is a choose your own adventure video, so have fun.
Yes, turn to page 3 now.
And here we are on page 3.
Ah, shit, why don't you pick page 3? That's the booby page.
Oh no. Please welcome Stacey. All right, let's get into our first film, Poor Things.
That's a good thing I picked page 3 then, because there's a lot of boobies in this
There is a lot of boobies in this film.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, absolutely I would recommend this to anybody. I don't care what you like or what you're into, but personally I would recommend it to anybody, but I understand it is probably an acquired taste.
I'd easily go with the recommendation as well. And normally it's the kind of film that if I wasn't pushing to go see more stuff and expand my horizons this year, I probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. But I'm glad I did. It's different to the stuff I normally watch, but it's good for so many different reasons.
Yeah, well, you know very well, and our viewers will get to know, that Yorgos Lanthimos is like my favorite director of all time. I love all his work. Like half his filmography is in like my favorite films of all time, and this is absolutely his best film to date. I think it's not my personal favorite, but I think from an objective filmmaking standpoint, I think what he's achieved with Poor Things is a step above anything he's managed to do so far.
And I think I'm glad that, especially in recent years, we're getting a lot more big films like this that do have a message behind them of feminism, of female empowerment, but not done in like an explicitly egregious way. It's taken to a more surreal kind of place. I think Barbie did the same thing. They did it in a very fantastical, surreal kind of way. And same thing here, by combining elements really of horror and sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's not explicitly like this is a girl power movie. It's not one of those kind of films, but it's easy for you to draw those kind of messages as you're watching and taking
absolutely.
in.
It's full of men trying to control our woman main character for the entire time, trying to put her in a box. She wants nothing to do with any of that. She's discovering the world for herself. She has like absolutely no shame. I remember seeing a bit of an interview with Emma Stone talking about it and how it was so liberating to just like play this character that just completely had no shame and was full of curiosity and was just taking the world like as it was and making something out of herself like completely by herself.
It's interesting that you say no shame. It's not really a no shame thing for me. It's that they're rejecting kind of societal expectations. I mean, the idea of these things being shameful is something that is pushed by modern day society, and
Well,
she kind of
exactly,
suggests she's rejected the way that everyone kind of does things.
Yeah.
And it is a journey of self-discovery and liberation and doing things your own way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's almost because her brain is sort of reset at sort of the plot of the film. So she's essentially a person that started completely afresh in life. Yeah, it's kind of a nature versus nurture thing of society puts all this shit on us. What would happen if that didn't happen? Because she's obviously enclosed for like a lot of her life, like the first few years, I think it's suggested, and then as soon as she starts exploring this world, which is kind of completely new to her, she just has no problem exploring like whatever she wants to explore.
I think just performance-wise, everyone in the it's not even one of those things where you can kind of pick out and say this person was outstanding. I think everyone does a great job. I mean,
Absolutely.
anytime Willem Dafoe's on screen in any movie, I'm like, this is just enrapturing.
Yeah, and he disappears in her roles, but even more so here, like the prosthetics and everything. Like, what a sight he was the whole film. Yeah, he completely just disappeared into
There's
that.
like
It
a
was
very
incredible.
uncanny sense to everything.
And it's a big Lanthimos thing is uncanniness and almost being like on the edge of uncomfortable and almost secondhand embarrassment in a way in some of his films.
Yeah.
But everyone else, Mark Ruffalo was great. His accent slipped a little at times. I think when he got louder, the louder he got, the less British
The
he sounded.
more passion, less control.
Yeah, exactly. But performance-wise, I thought that was brilliant. Rami Youssef, who played the young doctor that was helping out.
Yeah.
Really, really good. He played this sort of patheticness to him, I think. He's sort of pining after.
Yeah, really kind of meek and unsure of himself.
And then, obviously, it goes without saying that Emma Stone, like, this might be one of the best, if not the best, performances, I think, of her entire career. Just loved it. Just loved everything about it.
Yeah, easy, strong recommendation.
Absolutely strong. The strongest you'll get today from me, anyway.
Yeah, because I think you said this is probably your number one for the month.
Yeah, absolutely number one for the month.
Probably my top of the month. We talk about next. Completely different movie.
Yeah, other end of the scale, really.
But easily recommended as well for different reasons. We finally got Godzilla -1, which I would recommend even if you're not big on Godzilla movies or those kind of big disaster movies in general, because Godzilla -1 definitely takes a different approach to that kind of film, because it's kind of running similar to, we've had the 2014 Godzilla reboot, Kong Skull Island, and everything that's been going on in that universe and how that started to connect. From what I've seen, that's kind of more about the monsters and the destruction of the big action set pieces, whereas Godzilla -1 takes it much further down, and the scale isn't from like the perspective of the giant monsters, it's from the people involved and how the destruction around them is affecting their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly what you said. This is literally my first Godzilla movie. I've never been interested in Godzilla in the past. Went to see this, and that is like one of the big reasons I loved it. Is it didn't make the destruction the main character, if that makes sense. Like, it's the family storyline that is the emotional core of the film that really drives the plot, and Godzilla's just this problem that's happening. And it's a massive catalyst for this guy's trauma and like overcoming the PTSD. That's what I really loved about it. Yeah,
a lot of times it felt almost like a direct remake of the original 1950s Godzilla. It's that it has all these direct references. I mean, the main character was a kamikaze pilot in the war.
Yeah.
And when Godzilla was originally conceptualized, it was kind of a metaphor and allegory for what happened to Japan after the war ended with the atomic bombs that were dropped on it. And Godzilla was kind of like a physical representation of everything they suffered following the war. And it did feel like that. It was almost like all of the destruction that was happening wasn't just big action set pieces, as it's like, oh, here's giant monsters destroying everything. It was really about the people that we were connected to, because the thing with Godzilla movies is we don't often get proper characters to relate to.
Yeah, it's just characters to follow so that we have a story. Yeah,
you can't make Godzilla the main character.
Yeah, you can't.
They
have just
try
Godzilla
to make him the main
stamping
character,
around
but
with
you
no
can't
one.
just have him. Yeah, but the characters are done really well in this one, and you actually do feel for them. You get close to this family, and you're affected by the loss and the devastation that they suffer. Which is exactly kind of the message that they were pushing, both with this and the original Godzilla, is everything that they suffered after the war.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it goes back to that. Whereas some of the more Americanized versions, I suppose, have less emphasis on that. Sort of, he is just a giant monster. And that's about it.
You're just waiting. You're just sitting there waiting. Like, when's he gonna do the atomic
When's he
breath?
doing the laser mouth?
When's he doing the atomic breath? Let me see it.
Godzilla,
Let
do
me
it,
fucking
please.
see it.
And then you get chucked out of the cinema for screaming. Oh, it's a whole
Again.
mess.
Yeah, we almost didn't get into this one because they recognized us from previous.
They were
Godzilla
like,
movies.
"You are not coming into a Godzilla movie."
You get worked up every time.
Like, no, this was different. And then we got chucked out for sobbing uncontrollably.
A weird kind of ending to it, and that it almost seemed like they were doing
It sort of felt like there was a bit of a tease going
a
on.
sequel tease kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I didn't
don't
expect
think
it
I don't
just
think it
because
needed it.
I wasn't really sure if it was standalone or, like I say, I'm not super familiar with the Godzilla filmography or whether that connected to anything. But yeah, it kind of seemed like they were working towards a sequel. Yeah,
I think it's more one of those things where Godzilla's become kind of such an icon of cinema in general that nobody wants to do a conclusive Godzilla is destroyed at the end kind of ending. You want to leave it on a ambiguous note so it's open for follow-ups or other interpretations.
Godzilla 0, maybe that's next. Next up is The Holdovers. Right off the bat, strong recommend from me as well.
Same.
This is a Christmas film that we got in January in
Why?
the UK.
Why?
This film is set at Christmas and they gave us it in January.
I think it was one of those things where it actually prompted me to look up why that happens.
Yeah.
In why does it get delayed?
Well, it's because they have little men running across the like with the little film reels. Like it takes them a while to get here. Yeah.
For certain films, apparently we just get bunched in with a bunch of other European countries in terms of the release schedule.
Right.
So that's why the films are delayed, because they have to do the subtitles for those countries, and we just kind of get bunched in with that.
Time.
And then sometimes it's to do with just profits. They kind of look at the year and go, when is the best time to release this in order to maximize profits?
Oh, I see.
Which cannot be the case for this one.
Yeah, that cannot be the reason.
There's no way.
People are going to love this Christmas film in January.
Specifically towards the end of January.
Yeah, not even like New Year. I know there's New Year in the film. It would have been fine at New Year. No. Wait till the end of January. Catch them off guard.
But despite all that, still great.
Beautiful film. Yeah, absolutely loved it.
I actually think... I can't remember the last time I saw a more genuinely heartfelt movie than this.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, Paul Giamatti, one of the comedic greats of our time. He's got quite a varied filmography over the years. He's not really known for one thing, but he absolutely nails the comedic parts and the dramatic parts of this role in equal measure. This gave me Dead Poet Society vibes, and I know I've seen a lot of people comparing it.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain aesthetic to it that I always say is one of two things. It's that whole idea of it's small town, off the grid America, and it's either going to be a youth coming of age kind of story, or a weird supernatural horror.
Yeah. And this went supernatural horror like 40 minutes in.
Yeah,
it was really weird.
Immediately, like,
didn't need it.
Wendigo started coming out of the woods. I was like, a weird choice for a Christmas movie. No, but there's definitely some kind of aspects of the coming of age stuff when we're following Angus's journey and how it's about him kind of maturing as a person, and dealing with everything that is going on in his life. And he kind of comes to grips with everything by being paired with the exact opposite, a proper grizzled old veteran teacher who's been in the game for years, who himself, his life didn't quite go the way he expected it to.
Yeah. And the performances of these main two here, I cannot believe this is Dominic Sessa's first film. Like, it's crazy, because the school it was filmed at, it was an acting school apparently, so they auditioned like students there, and he's the one that made it through, and he already had Oscar buzz around it. That's crazy, isn't it? First film, and you're already in an Oscar nominated film. And he just seems like he's been doing this for years. He seemed like someone that's been a teen actor, a child actor maybe, and he's just come out of the gate running, and I'm excited to see what he does next. He's holding his own against one of the comedic greats of our time, Paul Giamatti.
There's something really kind of just memorable. I think it's the way the film's edited, because I don't know whether it was filmed on like an older style camera or whether it was just added in post, but it has that kind of like that film grain thing going on.
Yeah, it's set in the 70s or 69 to 70, and it does kind of feel like it was almost released then as well. Like you say, the editing and the look of it has a big part of that, but I also think the comedy and the performances at times really do like harken back to that era of film.
Even small things like just the wipe transition stuff, it's very reminiscent of the idea of like old like home movies, and when they first got access to that kind of editing technique, and everyone was kind of obsessed with it.
Yeah, just using it to try and add a bit of
Just
excitement and
just
a bit
this
of
in
buzz.
Star Wars now.
This is Star Wars. Holdovers is the new Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't think seeing it in January detracted from it in any way.
No,
was
because it's not
still-
really about Christmas. It's just set
No.
at Christmas. But it kind of adds to it because, Christmas is a time for reflection and hope and, like, reflecting on your life and, like, New Year and new beginnings and things. And that's kind of what these characters sort of go through, really,
Yeah, they go through the Christmas arc.
They change.
We call
Yeah,
that
the Christmas arc. And then they set off fireworks in the kitchen.
Yeah, and then they jump on the trampoline.
And then they jump on the trampoline.
Jump on the trampoline and go to the hospital.
And go to the hospital. Yeah, if we're handing out prizes for the funniest scene, it's easily the scene where he breaks his arm.
Yeah, that cut specifically is...
Because I thought he was faking it. I thought the character was faking it. And then they cut immediately to, hurry up!
That's what... Because I remember specifically that was... From all the trailers I saw, that was the last bit they included on the trailers. It kind of... It
like
cuts to his
actual
expression
jump.
changing, and then it
Yeah.
freeze frames and has the title. But they don't include the cut after that, which is what makes the whole scene.
Yeah, a brilliant punchline. Yeah. Next up is Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget.
It's a toughie for me.
We have differing opinions on this, I
Yeah.
think. Well, I mean, this isn't a strong recommend by any stretch of the imagination. I think just a recommend if you like the first one. It's a nice addition.
I think my honest thoughts would be don't recommend, but that's not me pushing it down. That's me kind of on the vein that it's skippable. It's not got enough to it that I could genuinely say you should be watching this.
What it's good for is nostalgia. I mean, that's what it's made for. It's made for the people that grew up with Chicken Run. I just kind of like seeing these characters back in action. It's not going to be heralded in the same way. Like, the first one is classic is maybe a stretch, but it's definitely a lot of people's favorite Aardman thing. It's up there with Wallace and Gromit, I think, for a lot of people. Like, I think because I grew up with it, a lot of the lines of dialogue are so iconic to me, and the characters. I think it was just kind of nice and warm and fuzzy to see those back in action again.
But like going back to it, thinking about it objectively, like was even like the original Chicken Run that good?
Oh, now we're getting into some shaky territory here. I will not be having Chicken Run slander.
I don't know. It's definitely like something I'll watch, but I don't think that it ever hit the same kind of notes for me that Wallace and Gromit did.
Okay.
I feel like all of the best writing kind of went to Wallace and Gromit.
Well, we've got to the bottom of this then. So I'm a big first Chicken Run person. I loved it as a kid. And then you obviously, I guess, didn't love it as much.
I remember really liking it as a kid, and I'm just thinking back to it, like if I watched it again, would I kind of see it as the same? Because I can't instantly kind of think back to like a load of memorable bits or like quotes and stuff from Chicken Run like I can with Wallace and Gromit. I think Wallace and Gromit is much easily kind of drawn upon than Chicken Run is, but I'd still go back and watch it.
Well, I mean, every time someone says "My life flashed before my eyes," I just go, "That were really boring."
Yeah.
So there is
There's
parts of Chicken Run
definitely bits
that are lodged in my brain forever.
I don't want to be a pie.
I don't like gravy. Yeah, I think for me it was just a nice time to see them back, and it's just Chicken Run in it. Like it's a Chicken Run sequel. It wasn't going to be fucking groundbreaking.
No, that's what's missing. I think there's definitely lines from the first one I can think of, but could I quote anything that happened in?
No, I think that's the thing. Is that
second one?
you enjoy it while you watch it. It's not going to be remembered in the same way. I think that's the point I'm making here. Is it's not going to have the legacy. It's a nostalgia sequel. Well, maybe kids of now will that'll grow up with it. Maybe it'll be remembered more by them than us jaded late 20s.
It's a weird kind of effect to think of is films that wait that amount of time to capitalize on nostalgia. Do they ever end up being that good or that way? Because
they didn't mean to. It just took them 20 years to make it. I think that's a big thing about these nostalgia sequels is they just can't feel as genuine. It doesn't matter how much care they put into it as a film. It's just always going to feel like, hey, remember these characters from when you were a kid? You felt good then. You feel good now watching them, right? And I admit it absolutely worked on me, but that is what they all feel like at the end of the day. It's like, it doesn't matter how hard they worked on it, how good the script is. That is what it all comes down to, is people are going to pay for it because it's recognizable IP.
I think the one thing I'll give is like I'm glad they're giving more roles to
chickens.
Like British comedians and actors who otherwise wouldn't kind of get a shout in big movies. Or like, when was the last time you heard Ramesh Ranganathan in anything?
And it took me the entire film to recognize it as well.
Yeah. He's a chameleon. He just sinks.
He just
absolutely
it's like right
sinks
the role.
into every role.
He's method. He only ate cheese for like.
It's probably
months.
he's in like actually almost every movie. You just never realize it's
he's
him.
just never there.
Can't be said for Nick Mohammed.
No, can't be said for Nick
You
Mohammed.
recognize him right away.
Immediately. Next up, Wonka. I'd say a light recommend. If that's our scale, strong to light. It was surprisingly good. I think I was skeptical about a sequel. It was kind of, do we need that? A lot of the mystique of Wonka is what makes him such an interesting character in the first place. Like, I don't know if we need it explicitly spelled out. It's like I said with the nostalgia sequels, nostalgia prequels is almost the same thing. But it's also, some stories start at a certain point for a reason. And everything else is inferred. We don't need everything spelled out. That being said, this was just a nice film.
Nothing light about it. I think I could give a confident recommendation for it. Especially if, like me, you enjoyed the Paddington movies. Because I think it's the same
team.
Same sort of team behind it, and absolutely has those vibes. It's just a very wholesome movie.
Absolutely.
Overall,
I think you have to take it as he's not necessarily the same Wonka as the other portrayals. He's a much more wholesome. Like there's a darkness to Wonka that he doesn't quite do.
Yeah,
here.
I think
whether that is it develops as he gets older or something, but I don't know. He played it very whimsical.
Yeah. It's the one thing I'd say that Timothée Chalamet is probably my least favorite interpretation of the character, purely because it doesn't have that edge to it.
Yeah, but I think it works for the storyline of the film. I think it's meant to be a bit more of a wholesome romp.
And naive. It's because it wouldn't work if he wasn't naive and trusting of everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Music slaps.
The music slapped, absolutely. My favorite was the one they were singing around the giraffe. That almost had me in tears, honestly.
It's the big number where he opens the shop, I think, that I really liked.
Yeah, that was cool.
I think with this one, like you said, it was just a fun time. There's nothing offensive about it. And similarly to Chicken Run, it gives work to a bunch of British actors and comedians.
Absolutely.
Who otherwise
these
might
guys
not
are
get these kind of
struggling.
roles.
They're out on the streets every night in the cold. Give them some acting jobs, people. Come on.
I just want to see them more often.
Yeah, it is cool to see the faces we love from daytime British TV, primetime panel shows, getting some Hollywood work. Okay, so a medium recommend is our average.
Yeah, I think
Strong
if we
from
average
you,
it
a
out,
bit lighter from me.
average out, yeah, it's just a regular old recommendation.
Just a regular recommendation. Next is All of Us Strangers,
Which is the most recent. We've just seen it.
As of time of recording, we have literally just seen the film this afternoon.
We've just walked in the fucking door.
Walked in the door and hit record.
We need to talk about it now.
I'm still kind of processing my thoughts on this, obviously, but I'm not going to stop thinking about this film for a long time. This is right up my street. It's a beautiful story, I think, about grief and about dealing with that and the impact that a parent's love can have on a child and what can happen if that's missing. And yeah, it's about loneliness and what that can do to a person and yearning for something else. I think it just covers all these themes in such a simple way, and it honestly felt like a dream. This whole film, like, it uses kind of dream logic in a way where things don't quite make sense, but they don't have to.
Yeah, I almost took it in a literal kind of way in that the film is super grounded in that it's just a close-knit drama between a few characters. There is almost an element of the fantastical to it, like the magical and the supernatural. Obviously, you can attribute that to more of a psychological thing if that's your interpretation. I think I prefer to look at it as a more actual sense of magical realism, just because the film itself is so kind of melancholy throughout. I think if you look at it that way, it just brings more of a sense of closure.
Right, yeah.
Rather than thinking it was all kind of just in his head. And
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I can totally take that interpretation. I think for me, it was just a visual representation for us as the audience of what was happening, not necessarily things he was physically seeing. I think it was just a way of collecting his thoughts and his process. And I felt like throughout the film it was maybe to do with, it wasn't really made much of a thing of, but he was a writer and he was seeing it his laptop a few times, and I kind of interpret it as it's what he was going through to write this screenplay or whatever it was he was doing, and just the grief he had to process in order, and that's how he got whatever he got out onto the paper.
He was kind of using the writing as like an outlet for processing.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I felt like the film itself was a visual representation of that happening, like, in his mind. The direction on this from Andrew Haig was incredible. I think he really captured the way that memories can be like recontextualized as you get older, and like it especially struck me in the Christmas morning scene where he's with his parents, and it's clearly it's an actual Christmas day. Oh well, it's at night, but it's at Christmas. They were decorating the tree.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's clearly a memory that he actually had rather than just an imagining of him like hanging out with his parents or whatever. And just that he's there in his kiddie pajamas looking up at them, like singing to each other. And it's just one of those things where it's like such random normal moments in life can be completely integral to like how you remember your life. Core memories is the word. I think that's the term I'm looking for here.
And it does specifically tie into that idea you said about recontextualizing memories, because the interesting thing to note about that scene in specific is it shows you both the moment of him as he is now as an adult, reliving that memory, and he's kind of happy and smiling, and then it shows you the picture of him as a kid and he's very stoic, stone-faced.
Yeah.
And it is about him now kind of coming to terms with things that happened and being able to enjoy things as they were and look at the good, the positive aspects, rather than having to live with how awful things were at the time.
Yeah, it sort of suggested that he didn't have the greatest relationship with his parents, and he felt isolated as a child, and then obviously in the event of his parents' death felt even more isolated in life. And then we have the character of Paul that Paul Mescal plays. That sort of seems like a little beacon of light for a long time, and then big spoiler alert, it's not. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to make of that twist. I think are they going for kind of a cheap shock twist here? I wasn't quite expecting there to be anything like that, but then what does that say about his mental state and the way how strong and wild his imagination seems to be, that he's just imagined this entire relationship and it didn't happen, and kind of what that says about who he is and what he's been going through and how lonely he really is.
I think it's important to note they use it a number of times throughout the film, and it almost becomes the theme song of the movie. It's The Power of Love by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and that is an important message about how strong a force love is and how it can impact people. And it's kind of that idea of when he was a child, he was kind of had these fears that his parents would turn against him if he confessed to being gay, and it's that effect of how that kind of drove a wedge almost between them, and how they didn't really kind of clear things up.
He's left without a sense of closure from any of it. Yeah, and that's what he's trying to reach, and almost thinks he never will.
There's that sense of duality in that he's kind of has this fear of his parents withholding love from him, and then he does the same thing at the very beginning, and that was kind of the driving force of what happens at the end.
Yeah.
Because that was the moment that it happened.
Yeah.
It's that important kind of aspect of we don't really know what effect it's going to have, or like the exact moment where everything's going to be taken away from you, and how sudden like something like death can be. And it's just that's one of the driving messages, I think, is we don't always get to kind of choose how things play out and how things go.
Yeah.
But we have to come to terms with, you know, the cards we've been dealt, and process that
and do the best you can.
Yeah.
Poopy poo poo poo. Let's go back to joking around.
Oh well, I'm glad we can go back to joking around, because that's the first thing I get to talk about, like in a little solo venture, is very much just that. I won't spend too long on it, just because it's definitely not as deep. There's not a lot of themes and overall morals in it. Still a recommendation from me, a pretty high recommendation from me. Taika Waititi's latest film, Next Goal Wins, which you can immediately tell was a product of genuine passion.
I thought you were going to say about football. you can tell that from the title.
You can tell just from the title
football,
and what the plot's about that this is going to be a movie about football. No, you can immediately tell it's a passion project, because when you think about what the story is about, it's the story of the American Samoa national football team. There's no way that's like capitalizing on public interest.
No.
Nobody was pining for like a movie about the American Samoa national football team, except for maybe the people of American Samoa.
Except for me.
This is his stronger entry from him. It's definitely up there with some of my favorites. I'd seen people kind of become a little more iffy with Taika Waititi since Love and Thunder. I really enjoyed Thor Ragnarok. Not so much Thor Love and Thunder.
Yeah, the public opinion sort of did a bit of a 180 on him after that.
Yeah, I think that movie was a big driving force, because tonally it was all over the place. I think Taika Waititi really excels at the smaller films.
It felt like he was a bit stuck in the Marvel machine for a while. It feels like his stronger stuff is his original ideas, you know.
I still think Hunt for the Wilder People is probably my favorite from him.
I think I'm a Jojo Rabbit again.
This is close up there. It's same kind of territory as What We Do in the Shadows.
So I'm going to talk about a film called Totem. This is a strong recommend from me. I love this film. This is a beautiful little film from Mexico. It's all set in one day. It's this extended family. They're all gathering at the birthday party of this child's father who is sick with cancer. He's almost bedridden. And it's about kind of the chaos that's happening as they're preparing for this party. All the family members are arriving and it's a bit stressful and everyone's sort of all over the place. We follow our main character, Sol. She's this little girl and she sort of seems a bit lost throughout the whole thing. It's about her kind of learning and dealing with the idea of mortality. Because at that age, like, your parents are going to live forever. You're going to live forever. Like, it's not something you want to be thinking about or even really know about when you're that young. And it is about her coming to terms with the idea that her father's not going to be around forever. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It's just such a small, simple concept. It literally takes place over one day.
I always think it's impressive where those kind of films almost seem as if they're playing out in real time.
Yeah, it did sort of feel like it could have done that. It had a few time skips as it went along, but I think if they wanted to, they could have very easily done like a hour and a half of the day. She's sort of bounced around all her aunts and uncles and cousins.
Yeah.
Spends time with each of them, and then the carer for the dad sort of finds her in a corner, like asking Siri when the world's going to end and stuff like that. So it's kind of these little things, like she's having these seeds implanted in her brain about death and everything ending and how things can end. It was just a good exploration of how that manifests in a child's brain and what that means for them.
So I'm going to compound two into one that I'm going to talk about next, purely for the connecting reason that they're both Japanese.
Oh, they're all the same, are they?
Yeah. No, they're both anime films that are kind of very much about the real world, kind of combining with this surreal fantasy world aspect, just both done in different ways. So over this past month I watched The Boy and the Heron, which thumbs up, gets a recommendation from me, and Maboroshi, which not so much.
Oh.
Again, it's not like this is terrible, it's just, I don't think it's strong enough to
It's
get...
just that it didn't have a boy or a heron in it.
It didn't have either of those things. It didn't have Robert Pattinson doing a funny voice.
Which literally every film needs, please.
Yeah. If you're going to do a film, have Robert Pattinson in it and have him do a funny voice.
That's the bare minimum.
No, yeah, it just wasn't strong enough to earn a recommendation, I don't think. Okay. Not that it's like inherently terrible. Maboroshi is a movie that was directed by Maria Okada, who's done other work that I've enjoyed. She did a series called Toradora, which I've seen, which I really liked. There's a weird thing in this that it's set up in a way where the film kind of implies it's gonna be about this kind of supernatural, whether it's supernatural or sci-fi or magical kind of happening, and yet when it hits like the second, third act, it becomes less about that and it almost becomes like an afterthought. So Maboroshi is about this small town that has like a steelworks in it that explodes there's an explosion there right at the start, and the explosion causes these rifts in the sky, and the town itself is frozen in time so that they're essentially living the same day over and over and over again. Nothing ever progresses, but it's not in like a Groundhog Day kind of way, because Groundhog Day was affecting one person and everyone else's memories kind of just reset when the day reset. This is like the whole town is experiencing the same thing, as you tend to do in a lot of anime films. You're following these like high school students, and the whole film is kind of like raises these questions of like what it means to be alive, what it means to be real, and what really is real. Because the big twist of the movie is kind of, you find out that the other sides of these rifts in time, the world has continued. Where the movie loses its way is kind of, it sets up this really intriguing concept, and then the second and the third act focus more on a love triangle, and a very, very strange love triangle at that. Right. Because the love triangle involves
a boy, a heron.
A boy, not a heron, a girl, who the two of them, like, he sees them together in the future, and then that's how they kind of end up together.
Okay.
And then this third girl, who is essentially got like a child's mind still. So she was somehow transported from reality into their town. She came through the rift, but she continues to grow older, but she never really matures as a person. The big twist is that this child is the daughter of the main character and the main girl.
Oh, God.
But then she ends up developing feelings for the main character. So it takes a very weird twist, and that is the focal point of the movie instead of the cool sci-fi aspect. Not a great
So that sort of ruined it for you. Then.
The one thing I could say is it's one of the best animated movies I've seen. It's beautiful.
Like visually.
Visually it's beautiful.
Cool.
But The Boy and the Heron, on the opposite side of the spectrum, I love. And I know I'm going to get flack for some hardcore like anime fans who will see it as sacrilege, but I did watch both of them as the English dubbed versions. I just default to it.
Great, we're gonna have the mob on us now.
I find it easier. And if I'd watched like the original Japanese, I wouldn't have heard Robert Pattinson doing a funny voice.
That's true. He didn't do the Japanese one.
He's actually like
I would not put it past him to learn Japanese.
He's unrecognizable. I think like he does a weird croaky thing with his voice because he's the Heron voice, completely unrecognizable. Unlike Dave Bautista, I immediately knew it was Dave Bautista as soon as he started speaking. It's the latest Studio Ghibli movie, and I think if you've seen some of their movies, you kind of know what to expect. Pacing wise, it starts off quite slow. You just get kind of a glimpse into their regular everyday life, and then eventually, once they transfer into this kind of magical realm, you get hit with everything crazy all at once. It's just like, it's mad. Everything
surreal.
that they come up with, like, how did you come up with this? Who thought of this? But it's another movie that kind of deals with the concepts of grief and trying to control things and not being able to really control certain aspects of life, such as death. The main character is a young boy whose mother dies, again as part of the war. Apparently just watching multiple movies about the war.
That seems to be a bit of a January theme, doesn't it? Grief and the war.
Specifically from the Japanese perspective.
Yeah, true.
He goes into the spirit world because he's tempted by the prospect of seeing his mother again. He does eventually meet his mother, but a younger version of her, and through that he accepts that he gets this experience he didn't really have growing up, but he says, I've had this experience now and it's helped me cope with the idea of loss and grief. Both these movies kind of deal with that concept of what is really living, and what can and can't we control, what's life all about. One of them does it in a much more creative and enjoyable way, I think.
That made sense to pair those two together. You tied that up very nicely.
Wrapped it all in a neat little package.
The next movie I'm going to talk about is The End We Start From. This is a little disaster movie, I suppose you could call it. Not on the scale of a disaster movie that you would think of. The main idea is there's this huge rainfall in Britain, and it essentially floods like most of the country, and it leaves people dehoused and in shelters and scrambling for help, and there's a lot of death and destruction. We join the main character played by Jodie Comer. The film opens with her essentially going into labour, and her and her partner have this newborn baby. Literally as this rainfall's happening and the floods are starting to happen, the news is starting to kind of announce what's going on, and people are panicking. And the rest of the film sort of follows the journey of what happens. She ends up separated from her partner. It's just about this little journey she has to take, all the while protecting this child that she's got, and kind of learning how to take care of a baby in amongst like an apocalyptic situation almost. I thought it was cool. I forgot to say, just a straight up recommend.
Yeah,
it was pretty good. I think the pacing was a bit odd, but I think I maybe went into it expecting something it wasn't. I thought it was going to be more focused on her, but it took a while to get to that point. Like, it was very much about her and her family and her partner's parents and stuff as well to begin with, and it just sort of felt like they weren't panicking enough about what was going on. But I feel like when you think about it, that is kind of what would happen in that situation. A lot of people would just get on with it, because like we've seen with things like COVID and that, how like we all just have to get on with our lives sometimes when like huge world-ending events happen. I think it sort of explored realism from that perspective, rather than it being like, oh my god. So it just ends up being this sweet story about a mother and a child, and what lengths a mother will go to protect their young.
I think it's the opposite end of the spectrum, or well, not opposite end. It's the same story, but from a female perspective, like something like The Road, which is also very good.
Yeah.
I assume it's kind of one of the things where it focuses kind of like on the bleakness of everything, and like the worst kind of aspects of humanity and what people are driven to. And
absolutely,
it's like a kill
scavengers.
Scenario,
they invade like the camps, and they have to evacuate, and they get lost, and they're just wandering, and they have to hitchhike, and she steals a car at one point, and all with a baby strapped to her chest. It's just a great story about like motherhood. The disaster feels a bit like a secondary character, in the same way that Godzilla -1 wasn't about Godzilla himself. No. This wasn't about the floods and how that's affected the country. It was about like how this character deals with what's happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a big pitfall a lot of disaster movies fall into. Like, one of the big ones I think of is 2012, where that movie was just about the set pieces.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. It's
and
got
the
it's got
actual
none of that
destruction.
in this. It's not about the spectacle of what's going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's much more about the human element and like herd mentality and every man for himself and what like side you would fall into in those situations. You know.
I think what I'll go into now is definitely a strong unrecommend or disrecommend or not recommend, whatever you want to call it.
It's our first disrecommend.
This is the like.
Let's coin that term right now.
This is no longer like just a you can skip it if you want to. This is an active like no this is bad in all aspects. And this was a horror movie called Night Swim. I thought at the very least I wouldn't be disappointed by it because I saw the trailers. The premise was like it's a haunted swimming pool, so I had zero expectation of it being good. I just thought, oh, maybe it'll be like one of those so bad you have a fun
It'll be
time
a bit
with
silly,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. But no, not even that. Like it's just like a dull, very by the numbers, very you could predict every scare coming a mile away. They don't do a good job of it. When they take something like they try and make like Marco Polo scary, having the girl wander around going Marco and then like a ghost pops up and like Polo, and it's like that's just silly. That's stupid. I don't care about that. But I say like I shouldn't have been disappointed by it, but thinking back about it harder, there was an aspect to be disappointed about. It almost reeks of like executive interference. There's all these like little threads throughout the movie that point to like something that could have made it potentially better. The main family that we follow, the typical kind of family setup, it's the dad, the wife, and two kids. The dad, played by Wyatt Russell, is a former professional baseball player, and he's been struck by an illness, and now he's no longer like able to play it properly. They're looking for a new house, which again, like red flag. It's one of the tropes of horror movies that's in almost every horror movie you see is they move into new house at the beginning.
Yeah, and this one's got a pool.
Oh no! I'll talk about the pool revelation in a bit because it's even stupider than you'd think. There's these little like hooks throughout that never go anywhere. So the whole thing is that obviously the dad is a big sports star, and there's all these little kind of hints that there's almost like a fracture there, like a rift between the father and son because of that. Like it's a sense of, does the son feel there's resentment from the father because he's not living up to the expectation of being good at sports? There's all these little threads that like would have made for better character development and story in that regard if they'd run with that, but it almost seems like there was like executive interference, like no, we don't want that.
No,
we just want to buy the numbers. Dude, we just want to buy the numbers horror movie, just focus on the scares. And then the pool revelation is really stupid. I assumed going in that it was essentially going to be the pool is haunted because somebody drowned in it. Instead it was somebody drowned in it because the pool is haunted, and it's not haunted.
It's like a chicken and an egg.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing. It's so the way they explain it is that the water in the pool itself is evil.
Very Stephen King.
Yeah, very, very. It's
take an object, make it evil.
And this is where the thing about the father and the son would have made the movie better, because spoilers for the ending. They come to the realization at the end that it's like, we can't stop this entity or like this evil water or whatever. Like it has to claim a life. They rescue the son, but he's still being killed from like being infected by the evil water or whatever. I don't know at this point how the water works, but the dad goes like, no, a life has to be taken, and then he sacrifices himself to save the son, which would have been more impactful if they'd done.
If they focused on the relationship.
If they focused on the relationship between the father and son. The whole movie is bad. It's boring, bad, predictable by the numbers.
That's one of the worst offenders a movie can be, is boring.
Yeah, to me that is the number one offense. I think the number one goal for a movie is to entertain. If you're failing that,
bare minimum,
why did you even bother? So yeah, avoid Night Swim.
Avoid that film and avoid the pool. It's haunted. So next up, I'm going to talk about a TV show, which I think maybe a first on this channel. I don't think we've actually properly reviewed it.
No, we probably referenced.
We've referenced stuff,
I mean,
absolutely.
I've like just dumped Simpsons references out the wazoo.
This is called Truelove. This was a Channel 4 drama that aired this January. This is about a group of old friends. They've been friends for almost their whole lives, and they end up at one of their funerals making this pact that if any of them get to a point with things like dementia or illness where they're, incapable of taking care of themselves, they sort of agree, we will help each other end it. And so it starts happening, and, they start helping each other out. It sort of becomes a crime drama. One police officer, she's a bit suspicious of it, and she keeps looking into it. So it becomes this almost cat and mouse game where this group are committing crimes they don't want to be committing. They're ending their friends' lives. It's obviously, there's some really harrowing scenes in this. You really feel the emotions as these like lifelong friends like watch the life drain from each other's eyes. And it escalates and escalates, and I really enjoyed it. It was really gripping from episode 1. It's slow moving at times, but it's a slow burn that really pays off in the end. I'd recommend it if you like. It felt like if anyone's read Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club, it felt a bit like that, kind of old people like.
Yeah.
But it was, that's about solving crime. This is old people doing crime. But it felt like that. It's a group of old friends.
Recommend it if you enjoy crime.
Recommend if you enjoy crime and old people. I enjoyed it, yeah. It was a good watch. Very gripping stuff.
Complete opposite end of the spectrum. No crime, no old people. The last proper thing I want to talk about. I'd say specifically I recommend it if you enjoy musicals, because the last thing I want to talk about is the 2024 version of Mean Girls. To be fair, I hadn't actually seen Mean Girls, or at least couldn't remember seeing Mean Girls before hearing about this coming out. I was like, I'll watch the original, because I like to be able to sort of draw comparisons between the two things. But it's not really one of those films that you draw comparisons between, because you can kind of do that with remakes, with like straightforward remakes. This is less of a remake. It was kind of a complete change of the format, and then a movie adaptation of that. Like, obviously they took Mean Girls, they turned it into a Broadway show,
yeah,
and then they did a movie version of the Broadway show. So it's less than a straightforward remake. It's more
they didn't just remake it and add songs.
No,
it was already
there's definitely like things they lift, because Mean Girls is easily like up there as one of the most quoted movies of all time.
Yeah,
even to this day, people still reference Mean Girls.
Yeah, it's October 3rd. On Wednesdays we wear pink.
Yeah, Wednesdays we wear pink. That's so fetch.
Yeah, it's sort of entered. It's one of those films where it's entered the vocabulary of society. Yeah.
People just reference it like off the cuff all the time.
Yeah,
and this movie is listed as like a comedy musical. I think it's only really going to be a comedy for people that didn't see the original, because a lot of the jokes are just the exact same thing.
Okay.
It's the exact same joke because they had to. You couldn't really do like a Mean Girls musical without all these lines because they're so ingrained to the movie. But for people who didn't see the original Mean Girls, I think the timing is still there pretty well. The actress who plays Karen in this, who's like the dumb one. I mean, all of the plastics are kind of like dumb, but she's like the dumb one out of a dumb bunch. Her timing is really good. She delivers all of her lines perfectly. In terms of like as a musical, I think movie-wise, Wonka is a better movie. But I think I might have preferred the music in this.
Okay, yeah.
They do something quite clever with it. You have Katie, Damien, and Janice, who are sort of our main friend group. They're the more kind of like genuine ones. They're the ones you're following. And so their songs, when it's focused around them, are more traditional kind of show-tuney. And when the Plastics have their songs, they sound a lot more like modern manufactured pop hits. So there's like a very cool like difference between like those two things. And they are really good. I really like the music from this. The other clever thing I think they do is in the original, whenever the like gossip is spreading between all of the students, they do a lot of stuff like that. It's just rumors and gossip, because that's a big plot hook, is it's all about people talking behind each other's backs and how that affects people. Whenever the gossip is spreading around, they do almost talking head interviews where it's like straight to the camera. They do a similar thing in this, but because it's a modern interpretation, they incorporate into social media and how fast that spreads. And what I appreciate is, I don't think they directly use the logo, but the layout is almost exactly like TikTok.
Right.
They got that really well. It looks very authentic. And there's a few returning stars. Obviously, Tina Fey is back in it.
She produced it, right?
Yeah, she produced it. I think she might have done some writing on it as well. And Lindsay Lohan herself has a small cameo as well.
Oh, cool.
But I think it's just a fun movie. It's fun. It's a very easy watch. You can just sit down and be like, yeah, I'll watch I'll watch Mean Girls. It's not gonna hurt me. It's not gonna reach out the screen and start hurting me.
Not like Nice Swim. It's not gonna hurt me.
Oh no, that
not like
hurts
the pool.
me. That's physically painful.
All right, that brings us to the end of our main list.
To our main list,
But
yes.
you apparently have some kind of bonus thing you want to talk about that I am unaware of.
Yeah, it's what I wanted to talk about, and you'll have to bear with me in this because it kind of goes against the grain in that this is not necessarily a new movie that I saw over these past couple of months. It wasn't released over the past couple of months, but I still think it's important to talk about because it's gone under the radar for so long, and I think this is the year that we should really push for it to kind of come back into the mainstream and people should be talking about it again. And it ties in well to what I've just been talking about because it's another musical, and I've talked about The Boy and the Heron and like Chicken Run, and there's been a lot of animation in this. It's another animated film, another beautifully animated film, and it ties into a lot of stuff that you've been talking about as well. It's just about the family aspect and togetherness and the journey. This is what Night Swim should have had. It's a father-son dynamic and how there's a rift between them and how through all of their struggles they kind of have to repair that and come together at the end to solve a problem, which isn't the main focus. The main focus is their story, and it just has a great message of unity and togetherness that I think for this year in specific, over the past, like in recent years, there's just been a lot of division in the world, and we're bringing ourselves back together, and this is the perfect movie to do it. So my strongest recommendation from all of these goes to a Goofy movie, baby. I watched a Goofy movie. A Goofy movie. We bring it back. 2024, we bring it back, a Goofy movie. It's the best one. 1995, already a great year, made it better. A Goofy movie. Thumbs up. Strongest recommendation. A Goofy movie. But at the same time, Disney, don't ruin it. Don't put a live action one. You're going to ruin it. 2024, a Goofy movie.
Thank you for watching HAZMAT, talking about movies we saw in January.
If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more stuff like a Goofy movie.
Thank you for watching HAZMAT's The Monthly Thing for December and January 2024.
If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more a Goofy movie related content in the future, you can support the channel by leaving a like and a comment. You can hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you'll be alerted to our more recent uploads. And as always, all of our socials will be listed down in the description.
And join us next time where I hide in a big bucket of popcorn.
And we're going to use that so that we can watch a Goofy movie, baby. 2024, Goofy movie coming back to cinemas. 2024. I can't confirm that, but they should do it. A Goofy movie. 2024. We're doing it. We're bringing it back.
Send help.